Quick introduction. My name is Pierce Umloff, the president and CEO of Jeep Jamboree USA. I just want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. I know we had about 800 people registered to come on this talk this evening. Last night we had the talk. We have Justin here and Kia with us from Warren and Factor 55, along with Eric Lowenhagen and Mike Sipe from our team. One thing I want to say, we did this for about 70 trail guides last night, and the information was absolutely remarkable. I've been doing this for 28 years, and I learned so much information last night from Justin and Kia about winching techniques and recovery techniques that I had no clue about. So, the whole idea with this, I came to Mike about 3 months ago, and I said, hey, I have an idea to do a webinar. And you said, well, webinars are outdated, and you had done a lot of research on this, and you came up with the idea of doing a Jeep Jamboree Tech Talk, and you and Eric kind of have run with this since. And just so everybody listening, I mean, Mike and Eric and Justin and Key have been working on this for really months at the end of the day, putting this content together for everyone. A couple quick notes. Some people last night said they had some audio issues. Typically, that's on your end and connectivity issues. We will be recording this and putting this out for people to listen at the end of the day. So when we're done with this, we'll have a recording of this out. But you also see us go off screen a little bit. Mike, Eric, and I will probably take our screens off so you can see what Justin's talking about. There is a Q&A section up here as well. We encourage you to put some questions in there. We'll answering those more at the end of this, but Eric may jump in and ask a few questions as we go along this discussion. But the idea of this was to educate people and be safer on the trail. One story that I do have is my dad, when I grew up, said, I really want to teach you about gun safety. And we grew up around guns as a family. But he said, the reason why I want to teach you this is because when you're at a party and you're a kid and someone pulls out a gun, I want to make sure that you know what's safe and what isn't. And the reality is a lot of this is what we're teaching today is when you're out on the trails, you're going to have people that have a brand new winch on their vehicle and don't know how to use it. And if you're educated on to be safe, you're going to, in the reality, keep other people safe out there. This is a dangerous sport we're in. It can be dangerous. It's a tremendous amount of fun, but can be dangerous at times. And learning a few simple techniques, learning how this equipment works and how to stay safe will keep it a happy experience for you and your family. We've heard a number of stories over the last couple of years of people being injured, people dying because of recovery. These vehicles are heavy. We're under a tremendous amount of tension. And these guys that we brought today to talk to you guys are the experts in this. And so we figure the more people that can learn, the safer we'll be out there. And the idea was to create this to be a safe environment and a free environment to learn. So anyway, I'm going to turn this over to Mike and Eric real quick to say a few things. And then these two gentlemen are going to hopefully educate us all on being smarter and safer out there on the trails.
All right. Thanks, Pierce. And we're at 128 participants. We look for the number to go up pretty high. So we've got definitely some hopefully a lot of attendance going on here. I'm Mike Sipe. I'm the event and training manager here at Jeep Jamboree USA. It's an honor to have you on this first Jeep Jamboree USA Tech Talk. And we're going to dive into a crucial topic, proper off-road recovery techniques. And, it's really, as Pierce talked about, he mentioned the gun word, right? Well, honestly, yes, it's definitely something that needs to be top of mind as we're using these winches and these components, especially, all these recovery components. But safety, doing it in an efficient way and doing everything without a hitch. So I know some of you are new off-roaders. There's going to be a lot of experienced off-roaders on here. What I hope you walk away with is something new that you learned. Just like anything in any industry, this part of the industry changes all the time. There's new techniques that are being used or developed, new technologies, and that's why we brought the experts on from Warren and Factor 55. So don't want to bore you with my talk. I want to introduce really quick Kia Aghai and Justin Andrews. And guys, I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourselves. What better way to do it than you do it yourselves? Go ahead, Justin.
Hey, everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. And thank you for Jeep Jamboree USA for hosting this and asking us to come on here. So my name is Justin Andrews. I'm the brand manager at Factor 55 and for Warren Industries. So today is actually, we're celebrating the 5-year anniversary of being acquired by Warren Industries today. So 5 years ago today, Warren bought Factor 55, and then I was assimilated into the big red W. So now it's been an honor and a privilege to be a part of their experience. I was the first employee at Factor 55, and also, kind of a little fun backstory we want to share with, many of you may have seen or heard of like some of the products that we have innovated and developed. But Warren Industries as well has been in business since 1948. That's when Arthur Warren invented the locking hub. In 1959, we released the first electric winch. And then even in 1978, Arthur's son, Thurston, was part of the inaugural class of the Off-Road Hall of Fame. So the history that is involved with Warren, basically giving us the drivability to be in and out of four-wheel drive and to recover our vehicles in the backcountry. I mean, we live and breathe in the dirt. And so for Factor 55 to now be a part of that legacy and for us to be able to represent that is just the greatest privilege in the world. I have raced the Baja 1000. We just finished 4th place at King of the Hammers this year in a 2-door Jeep. So we got the Jeep across the finish line in the stock class. So we are, I'm all about things Jeep and super excited to be here and can't wait to dive into this and kick it over to my man Kia and let him introduce himself there as well.
Hey everybody, I'm Kia. Yes, it's pronounced just like the car. Very easy to remember. I'm currently the Associate Director of Product Education here at Warren Industries. I'm actually in our headquarters in Clackamas, Oregon, at my desk where we build all the winches and have a paint line and fabricated goods coming out of here. I've been with the company for 7 years now. I started on the engineering side of things and then dwelled into product management for our industrial channel, so heavy duty towing and recovery, fire and rescue, military. And then I took on accessories with respect to trucks, power sports, and more of the industrial stuff. And when we acquired Factor 55 and we became one big happy family, I started overseeing a lot of their product management as well. And I've taken all that knowledge and all that technical detail, and we're trying to move into the era of education and training. So we're really happy to be putting this on with you guys. So we appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to be here with us. And thank you for Jeep Jamboree for having us. What we're really looking to do is getting you out on the trail and utilizing all the tools and the rigging components as efficiently and safely as possible, because at the end of the day, we want everybody that goes out to come back to their loving homes and families so we can enjoy another day out on the trail. So I'm excited to be here and looking forward to getting the show rocking.
All right. Thanks, Justin and Kia. So let's get started. So tonight we're going to be really covering 3 essential topics: understanding recovery gear, safe recovery methods, as well as proper use of that recovery equipment. So Justin and Kia are going to go through all those 3 topics. So as we're going along here, you'll see there's a button at the top called Q&A. Feel free to put any question in there. We're going to answer as many as we can tonight. But what we'll do too is at the end, we're going to save about 10 to 20 minutes towards the end to go through some of those questions. Eric is going to jump in with some of those questions and hopefully we can get some answers, especially if they're relevant to the conversation at the time. But depending on how many questions we get and with all the participants coming in, we might batch some of these and actually send out a note to everybody answering some of the most common questions. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is make sure you're educated on everything that we talk about. All right. Well, I don't want to hold everything up here. Oh, Eric's got one question.
I was going to add one thing real quick. With the Q&A section, because of the size of the meeting and the number of people that are on, the Q&A is moderated. So we'll be gathering all your questions up. We'll answer the ones we can during the time, but don't worry, we will get to your questions.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate that. All right. So Justin, Kia, let's get this started with basics of recovery gear.
Well, thank you guys, and thank you guys again for tuning in. So we're going to kind of go over like a bunch of different, equipments and how some of the products that we manufacture work. And first talk about some different kind of materials, what the products are made out of, and kind of review all that. And again, just like we've already mentioned, like as far as the Q&A section goes, as we get on, we really want to be able to answer as many of those questions as possible. So feel free to drop those in. If you have anything else, and stay tuned for the end because we're going to have something special to also talk about at the very end of this. So again, so I was the first employee at Factor 55. I've been here now going on my 12th year working in the industry, and have been able to do kind of everything from mild to wild. And so we saw from the littlest like development when it came from even our winch lock bolts all the way up to what we're really known for, which is starting off, which is our winch line shackle mounts. Now, one of the things we want to first talk about is like the end of the winch line, and one of the main reasons why we got acquired by Warren was like when you think about like the winch, and especially those of you that got brand new Jeeps, that the winch is actually coming on the Jeep factory. It comes with a conventional steel winch hook. And the winch hook, the one thing about the winch hook is that hooks were always designed for overhead lifting, to where like the load would stay centered in the throat of the hook because of gravity. They weren't ever really designed for pulling. So part of the situation that we came into was like when we developed what we call closed system winching. And what that means is that when you're using your rigging hardware with the end of a winch line shackle mount, you're tightening everything together and nothing can come loose in your rigging tackle. Where conventional winch hooks can be used safely, but they have the tendency to where the little safety latches on the ends of the hooks can break or bend, or hooks can tip load. And if they tip load, they open up. So starting with our flat link E, one of the biggest things that you have is when you have, like, especially with synthetic rope, you'll have an aluminum Haas fair lead. This fair lead sits on the front of the vehicle in front of the winch, and then your rope will pass through there. So with a conventional hook, you only have a few options of how you're going to store that. One of which is the hook is pulled out to the shackle tab or rested somewhere else, which is leaving the winch line exposed. Or what we see a lot of is people will take that steel winch hook and run it into the fair lead. Well, now you have a piece of steel rubbing on this piece of aluminum just while you're daily driving. So you're starting to damage that critical surface that synthetic rope is then trying to pass over. So one of the biggest innovative things that came out of these closed system winching shackle mounts was the integrated rubber pads. I have so many people that come up to us at events and say, oh, well, I got one of your parts on there, but I've never used it. When in reality, because of those integrated rubber pads on the ends of the part, as it's touched up against that fair lead, it's keeping no metal to metal connection on the end of your fair lead. So it's sitting in there snug all day long while you're daily driving. So if it's going to stay on there for like 99% of its life, where you're only maybe going to be winching a few times a year, depending on how aggressive a trails that you're going to get on, this is protecting the fair lead surface. It's protecting the rope behind the fair lead until you're ready to go use that. It's also keeping it away from road debris, trail debris, and really prolonging your lifeline, for lack of a better phrase, for when you actually need to deploy it. So over the years, we developed originally our ProLink thimble product, then our foldable shackle mounts for better approach angle, then led into, even because of King of the Hammers and for off-road racing purposes, which led into our Ultra Hook. So the same kind of thing where we have Ultra 4 Racing, Ultra Hook is where that came from. So part of the things of what we did and that was innovative in the Ultra Hook in the design was these finger grips on the top of the hook here. So those finger grips that are right there, which Kia's got really close up to the screen, those finger grips were designed to where when you grab this, that you would actually rotate the hook and you will hook up from the bottom during your rigging tackle. And the reason why that is because you should always use a hook, even the conventional winch hook that comes with your winch, in this position, so that the throat is always facing the sky. And the reason being for that is if you ever had a tip load or any type of failure and this were to open, it's going to shoot the energy towards the ground, versus when you come down onto something like this, which could tip load this open, and that's what flings it back at the vehicle. So ideally, we put these finger grips in here in order to rotate that around so you could hook up from the bottom. Now, a lot of people ask us, well, why is the engraving upside down when I'm using it? That's because, again, just like with the pinhole at the bottom of the Ultra Hook, 99% of its life, it's living up against that fair lead surface. And so we did that to where you could still read everything on the front of the hook, but the pinhole is facing down, so there's no water or mud or debris collecting in the bottom of this pinhole. So the other thing that's crazy innovative about this is because of how lightweight these products are, because they're billet machined out of USA-made Kaiser-built aluminum that we make right here in Boise, Idaho, is that with the closed system shackle mount, you can do that or have the quick attachment here if you want to move forward from something else like the Flat Link E. Now, part of the other thing with the Flat Link E is not only can you use the bow end of a 3/4 shackle or the pin end of a shackle, you can also use a soft shackle. The other thing about this opening is that we all know about the OE hooks that come on the front of our Jeeps. So this will also thread right over top of those hooks for some of those lighter poles when you're just trying to move a vehicle, maybe up a ledge or up an obstacle. So sometimes this eliminates other pieces of rigging just because of the ease of attachment to it. The same thing goes with the rear S hook that comes on the back of the frame rails. If you're trying to winch somebody from the rear, sometimes you can get away with doing that without needing any other piece of tackle because it's already built in right there from the part. So for those of you that are going to get more aggressive or you're looking for better protection, we also then came out of, necessity really, where this would attach to the end of your winch line and your winch line would still be exposed to the end of the shackle mount. We then also came out with our rope guard, which is an additional piece that goes over the front of the shackle mount, which now acts as a skid plate on top of this. So now it's fully protecting the end of your winch line and also protecting the product itself. So when you have this in conjunction to the front of your fair lead, you have your fair lead sitting in here, you're winching your winch line in, you have a positive stop against the fair lead, you have integrated rubber pads protecting the fair lead surface, the rope is protected behind here, and now all of your rope and everything is completely protected in the front end, so you can run that into rocks, and that can take the damage without damaging your valuable and expensive synthetic winch line. So this is it's a wonderful upgrade to get into when you're thinking about the storage of your winch line and protecting that for years to come. Now, expanding past just the end of the winch line tackle that we offer, one of the things that we also want to one thing I want to point out here too is that in the box that every single part comes with, and inside of the package here, we actually provide the destructive testing certification, which Kia has got really close up on the screen there. That certificate is in every package of every product we manufacture, whether it's a piece of synthetic rigging or whether it's any of our hard goods. You get this verification that when we have a working load limit or say that it's got a minimum braking strength, we prove it. And we share all that transparent data with you off of the Factor 55 YouTube channel. You can see a wide variety of the destructive testing that we've done. So when we're talking about how the loads that get applied to these things and how they get used, we have all of the scientific data to back that up. As well as what we're going to get into right now, we're talking about different components that come of the recovery gear that we offer. So this right here.
Justin, I got a quick question for you. So
Sure.
I'm going to tech out nerd guy here. I'm a design engineer. So your fair lead, how many colors are those offered in? And that's going to lead to a fun topic.
So the fair lead only comes in the gunmetal gray finish because it's
why is that?
So it's 6061 aluminum alloy and it's mil spec type 3 hard anodized. For those of you that might be gun owners that are out there know that is the mil spec hard anodizing, the type 3 hard coat is very common in a lot of gun parts, right? Because it's actually 2 mils thick. On a scale, it's actually as hard as sapphire. So what it does is actually fuses a millimeter of that into the bonds to the material, the aluminum, and then another mil onto the surface. And when you take the 6061 alloy and you dip that into that anodizing process, this is the result of that color. The gunmetal gray is a result of that coloring process. So we do offer a range of powder coated colors that are more high vis, some that actually match some of the OE colors available for the Jeep. So just like Kia, can you bring your hook back on the screen, Kia? So this right here is our brand new bronze color that we just released. The part number actually ends in -92 for the color code because we did our best job to match that to the 392 gold accents on the front of the Jeep. Okay. So pretty cool. So we do offer a wide range of different parts, having them done in either a powder coated finish or into the hard anodized or even the bright dipped anodized like our blue or silver finish. So
and on that fair lead, actually, that's a good point. So Mike, Justin, if you put that fair lead up, so all of our fair leads actually start at 1 inch thick. The industry standard is actually 3/4 inches thick. The reason why we go to 1 inch is because we elongate that radius that's on the front side where that rope feeds into. The better the radius you have for your rope to guide along into the barrel of that drum, the more you're going to extend the lifetime of that rope. Rope's #1 killer is abrasion, and literally abrasion. So the more chances you give it to not get abrade, or to reduce that abrasion, the longer the rope life you will have.
Great stuff.
And that's our standard is at 1 inch.
And so next to me right here, what I have is our what is a representation of our sawtooth recovery kit. So we're based here in Boise, Idaho. So we named all of our recovery kits after the mountain ranges here in Idaho. So the sawtooth kit represents everything that's for vehicle assisted towing and for winching. We do make our smaller kit, the Aghai kit, that's for vehicle assisted recovery for non-winching. We do offer, and we also have our Bora kit, which is our largest kit, mostly made for municipalities, that comes with even more advanced rigging components, that kind of stuff. But the one cool thing about these bags is everything in here is tested, rated, and USA made, including the bag itself. We make these bags right here in Boise, and I mean, it's a beautiful kit. So one of the biggest features when it comes to this kit is it unzips from the sides. You have a Velcro patch on the back. You got MOLLE on the back and on the top, so you can attach different pieces or other little bags to this. But when you unzip the sides, the whole kit lays completely open. So now you're not digging to the bottom of the bag trying to find all the bits and pieces and the components that you have in here, and you can get into whatever it is that you need depending on the situation. Now, what we do is that we offer so many different types of straps and sizes, and so we're going to kind of cover all those things in here. One of the first big pieces that we offer that comes in the kit is, just like our winch line shackle mounts, we also have our hitch receiver shackle mounts. So this is our 2-inch hitch link. So this goes into the hitch receiver, and then it has a nice radius on the end here, so you can actually use either a hard shackle or a soft shackle with the end of this with the hitch link. And it'll color match to whatever the winch line shackle mount that is that you have on the front, but this now becomes that dedicated rear recovery point on the back of your vehicle for those of you that have a hitch. Now, one of the other things that's really neat about this is that, especially outside of just our Jeeps, if you're trail wheeling, the rest of the year and you come across somebody that's stuck, you also now have a tool to where you can pull this out and put this into the receiver of another vehicle that you're trying to recover. So instead of trying to, be frustrated or figuring out where you should hook up to that vehicle, if it's got a hitch receiver on the back, you now have a dedicated tool that you can have in order to put in there to create a good dedicated recovery point. This doesn't see destructive failure until above 56,000 pounds. So it'll work with any standard hitch pin, 5-inch hitch pin that'll go in there. And we do make USA made hitch pins that we have pull tested and are rated, but any hitch pin will work to pull through this. So you usually start to see the hitch pin fail at about 30,000 pounds. And this still fails 20,000 pounds above that. So that's a really cool piece that comes within the bags. I'd also like to mention too, as we get into this, every single component here is available individually. So you can save and bundle it and buy it as a kit, or you can also upgrade to different pieces or buy different pieces all individually and make your own kits however you see fit. So what we have in here is we have our standard duty soft shackle, right? We have our extreme duty soft shackle. We also have our standard duty toe strap. And then we also have a couple of other short slings like our 8-foot tree saver and our 2-inch shorty. And then for an expansion off of this kit, then we also have our extreme duty kinetic energy ropes. So the types of materials that we use in this, all soft shackles are made out of ultra high molecular weight polyethylene. Say that 10 times fast. Ultra high molecular weight polyethylene is basically like a high modulus, fiber that gets pulled out of this. It's like a really dense plastic. So that's what synthetic rope is made out of. So again, it's self-lubricating. It's really lightweight. It's super strong based on the density and the scale of it all. But the one thing that it doesn't like is it does not like abrasion. So we give you two different versions where, like this one, the extreme duty is exactly just the same, made out of the same material, but the only difference is it has a polyester jacket that's been whipped around the outside of it. And then it's also been coated in what's called fiber lock, which helps preventing the rope fibers from fraying. Now, the same kind of situation is for the nylon fibers that the kinetic energy rope is made out of, because the nylon fibers are like a giant bungee cord. So this will stretch, these will not. So these are for static loads, and for rigging connection pieces, this is like a giant rubber band, right? So underneath of this red core, this is actually a polyester jacket that has the nylon fibers put underneath this core here, right? And so just like our toe straps and the rest of our tree savers or any of our flat straps, This is also made out of high dense polyester, so there's minimal to no stretch in this material. So what that's really good for is that we kind of differentiated to where if you were doing an extraction recovery in compression terrain, whether it's sand, snow, or mud, then you would get that vehicle unstuck using kinetic energy and a kinetic energy rope. But if you were going to flat static tow somebody, or even if you needed to use something as a winch line extension, that's what this strap is good for. So you can see here, when you get into this, that there's actually this little blue stitching that's on the middle of the strap. That blue stitching signifies, it's an industry standard that signifies that that is high dense polyester. Now, the other thing I want to point out is on every single piece that we have here, and Keith, if you want to hold the soft shackle up, you'll see right here on the labeling of our straps, you're going to see that every single strap that we offer, every single soft shackle that we make has an individual serial number for material lot traceability. So we can trace every single component back to the desk of the person that assembled the product and the day that it was actually manufactured. You're also going to see that up here, you're going to have clearly marked for all of its working load limits and braking strengths for a straight pull, a basket, or a choke on how you would actually use this strap. So all of that information is provided right here, which you will not find from pretty much any other company in the industry. So we're trying to set that standard to say, like, these tools are here to keep you safe. And that way, if there's any manufacturing defect or anything through that, it can be traced back to that person that put this together. So we can look at the entire lot to figure that out. And so we have that same documentation on the aluminum that we machine our parts out of for that reason, because we're selling to the military, fire rescue worldwide. So just like the standard duty tow strap, our 8-foot tree saver is made out of the same high dense polyester, only this one is 3 inches wide instead of 2 inches like the tow strap. And then it has this extra protection of a Cordura sleeving to go around the inside of it. So as you're putting this around either a rock or a tree or any anchor point that you have, that's keeping that strap protected while it's in use. Now, one of the really neat things about this strap is because it's 8 feet long, there are certain times where that strap may not even be long enough to get around some of the trees, depending on where you live. And so that's when you can take these additional rigging components, attach them together, and even use our short recovery strap here to even lengthen that around to put them around larger trees. Or most of the time, what I end up using the 8-foot tree saver for is in a bridle configuration, which we'll kind of get into in best case use scenarios here in a minute. But that would also be able to use the strap where you're attaching to two ends, both ends of the eyes, and having the strap come out from the front and pulling from the center of the vehicle. Because a lot of times if a vehicle is really mired, what can happen is that when you're grabbing from that point and trying to winch them out of that hole, you have the potential where if they're really bound up, it could tweak the frame, it could do all kinds of weird things because of the forces that are being applied. So this is a great way and a tool to not just only utilize as a tree saver, but actually utilize it as just a short anchor sling to be able to attach that to 2 points and pull from the center and distribute the load and that force when you're putting it onto another vehicle. So this is a really versatile tool that way. Now the shorty strap, one thing that's really neat even about the shorty strap is that this short anchor sling is essentially designed to where you can use this especially around unconventional recovery points. So here in Idaho, when we get in the backcountry, I can't tell you that every time I hit the trail, there's somebody in a side-by-side or a Subaru Outback in a place that they don't belong. And then if you have to try to help them or assist them to get unstuck, what are you going to attach to in a lot of those cars? Luckily enough, these days, a lot of them will have a rear hitch receiver, which then this would come into play to be able to put into their vehicle. But this is a great tool to grab onto certain points on the vehicle, especially around a frame horn or anything that you can grab onto that could be load bearing to help extract that vehicle, with also moving your rigging out away from the vehicle. Most cars these days that are IFS, IRS, unibody, anything that are like that, we're also talking about vehicle sympathy. When we're in the backcountry, we don't want to cause any more problems or any more damage to the vehicle. So you're trying to like not damage, the plastic that's around the outside of the car or that kind of thing. And so these tools really come in to play in that situation. We also in the kit is our rope retention pulley. So the rope retention pulley is, these billet rings have been around for decades in the marine industry and the arborist community. So one thing that we did is that when we decided to release one of these, We actually patented a feature that actually has these little fingers in the inside of this. Now, how this works, so Key's got it close up there. How this works is when you open up the soft shackle and this comes out, you can take the eye of the soft shackle, you can put that through there. You don't got to worry about dropping it on the ground because it gets caught by the knot. You grab this out, and now I can walk up to whatever and set my rigging up to where this is going to be on here. Now, because this pulley is on this soft shackle, the soft shackle actually acts as the bearing in the pulley because, again, these fibers are self-lubricating. So this thing will spin and spin and spin around here and act as the bearing in that situation. Now, one thing you'll see when it's really close up is that the inside of the pulley has a larger radius. And the reason why that is so when this gets put under load, it prevents the legs of the soft shackle from squeezing on the sides of the pulley, which allow that thing to operate more efficiently. Now, the innovative thing that came out of this and the patented feature for this was when you have the end of your synthetic winch line, no matter what's on your rigging, whether it's an ultra hook, a flat linky, a traditional hook, you can set this up and not having to worry about pinching your fingers and run that through here and have the rope go down through the pulley wheel, be captured by those little fingers to allow the pulley wheel to rotate when this is under load. But when the rope goes slack, the rope can't fall out of the pulley. And that's one of the biggest key things. So we're constantly dealing in off-road. We're dealing with tension and slack and tension and slack. So this allows that from having to walk back up and reset that, because a lot of just regular pulley wheels and some of the cheaper ones that you find, the rope can jump the sheave. And if that rope jumps the sheave, now you have a rope on rope connection here, which then could start to really violate this pull or sliding those fibers over top of this. And then your rope could fail early. Now, past the pulley being in here, we also offer in our kits our standard 3/4 inch screw pin shackle. Now, these aren't just shackles that you buy at any kind of tractor supply store, right? These are not cheap imported shackles. These are actually USA made. They're drop forged in Texas, and they're made by Crosby. So these shackles are certified for overhead lifting. So they all come out of Texas, and we're one of Crosby's largest buyers of what's called their theatrical shackle. So this shackle comes with an epoxy-based powder coat on it. So it's really good for corrosion resistance, but it's terrible for UV stability. So then once we receive these from Crosby, we re-powder coat them into black and red for high vis, and also for if you're going to hang them off of your vehicle, in order to make them more resistant to abrasion, and also so they don't fade in the sun. So we take that extra step just to make the care for using these shackles. The other thing is these shackles have a 4 3/4 ton working load limit, which means 9,500 pounds. But these do not see destructive failure until above 60,000 pounds. So what you'll find is if you overload cheap shackles, what ends up happening is that it'll start to squeeze the ears of the shackle together. And as you squeeze those ears together, you won't be able to back the pin off of this. And so, again, as it goes into uses of any of our winch line shackle mounts, you can use like the flat link E with the pin end of the shackle, right? With the body of the shackle. There's all these different configurations and uses that come out of this. The same thing is if you're trying to attach to an unconventional recovery point that might be sharp and dangerous, that you don't want to put a piece of synthetic rope or a synthetic rigging against because of damage, that's where steel shackles still come into play. Now, one best case use for these as well, is anytime you have this in your rigging tackle, you want to make sure that the pin is always facing up. And the old joke is if you screw down, you never screw up. And the reason being is because as we are dealing again with tension and slack, it can back this pin off. And that pin backs off and it's in this down position, especially if you're in the snow, and that pin backs out and comes out of there and drops into the snowbank, you're never going to find it. Trust me, I know. So this is a really good method of just a best practice to think about of how to use steel shackles. So both of our kits, or all of our kits, will actually come with either 1 or 2 Crosby shackles in here. And then it'll also come with our fast fit, which is our rope splicing tool, which we will get to in a minute. We'll show you how that works. So again,
say Justin, sorry to interrupt you.
Yep.
Speaking of shackles, I had this one question that popped up. It said, what do you think of using split shackles for recoveries?
So the split shackles that are out there that we've seen, part of the thing is that it still takes use, right? You still need to know how the safe use and best practices to use those things. Anything that's going to be pulled on through a shackle tab or through this that has like a that's in double shear can essentially basically be loaded evenly and is going to be quite strong. But what can happen is if you are in a hurry or in a rush, or you're trying to send somebody else up the trail and you attached only one side of one of those split shackles just by accident, or it's buried in the mud and you're trying to get to that thing and you only get a strap or something loaded on one side there, you're instantly going to pull that thing open and side load that thing and fray it apart. So between pinched fingers and all these other things, and also we are not advocates for using anything that has to deal with life safety that's imported, no matter what the tool is made out of. We just don't feel that it's that much of a time saver, because when you're in the backcountry and you're setting up your rigging, you have the time to do it right. So the difference of saving the time of opening something up and trying to attach to that versus just picking this thing out of your bag and taking the 14 seconds to screw this pin in seems to be quite worth it to me to have an entirely closed system.
Thanks.
Great.
And the other question I had about a part there on the table that we got was, why does the hitch link have 2 holes in the back?
Oh, great question. So because this is for universal hitch receivers, so for those Toyota people that are out there, boo, right? So for the Toyota people that are out there, what happens is the spare tires are actually up underneath like the rear of the vehicle, right? And so some of them are very close to the hitch receiver. And because the hitch receiver has a pass through and you can see through this, depending on where the hole is at and how deep your receiver is, we have those set up that way so you can either have this be protruding out farther from the back end or closer in, especially if you're still running a spare tire or trying to get to this. It's just for adjustability depending on the hitch receiver and size. Now, we also do make this all the way up into a 3-inch receiver and a 2.5-inch. And we also have the 2-inch Pro version, which actually has a larger, even a larger radius here that's even more soft shackle friendly. And that's also been cross drilled so it can actually sit into the receiver in whatever configuration. So there are many different like other types of other than just our standard 2-inch hitch receiver shackleman. So great question. Yep.
Awesome.
So now the other thing is when it comes to like what Kia specialized in, which was our, in our industrial and defense division at Warren, on top of making all of these kits and all of these components sized for our Jeeps, we also do offer things that are even the big boy size. So we even make, well, that's actually like what Kia is holding up there is actually the large diameter industrial version of the RRP versus the Jeep size. And then just like how these soft shackles are sized for our Jeeps, this is actually for agriculture, mining equipment, military equipment, and this is even the largest one that we offer. So this soft shackle here breaks at 43,000 pounds, right? It's just this little guy here. This one actually breaks at 131,000 pounds, right? And that's not even the biggest one that we offer. So it's pretty phenomenal, man. Like what can be done with these synthetic rigging parts, right? I mean, it's like almost comical. Like I feel like Mickey Mouse with this thing.
Well, Justin, that was a very comprehensive overview of all the gear that you guys have. And you did touch on some safe recovery methods, so we'll make some time up there. But for the sake of time, if you could get into some of the recovery methods in a safe way that we could use out there while we're off-roading, I think it'd be very beneficial to everybody on the call.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the other big components that comes into these kits is actually right here in this outside pocket. So we do offer 2 training manuals, we're trying to figure out the best way to make these available to Jeep Jamboree participants as well. We have our basic guide to winching and our basic guide to kinetic energy recovery and towing a disabled vehicle off-road. Now, both of these booklets are great to keep in the glove box and have around, so that way you can always go back to reference them. They're available again individually on the website, and they will be available digitally soon too as well. So you would be able to keep that information on your phone. So in that scenario, especially when it comes to kinetic energy recovery, kinetic energy is probably the most dangerous form of vehicle recovery because it's unpredictable, it's explosive, and it's hard to control. So again, this is for compression terrain, for sand, snow, and mud. It is not meant to be used in the rocks, and it's not meant for towing. The reason being is because even though that stretch factor can eliminate some of that jarring and jerking feeling for any of you that have been towed before, the problem is that over a long period of time, that tension and slack will start to pull the elasticity out of these fibers. And if you do that, like as you're coming off of a trail, towing somebody, back to the main road, and then you go to hit this the next time thinking that you have the full stretch factor in this rope, you could break the rope and a lot of other bad things can happen. So it's a good best practice that you only use this for vehicle extraction. And then if a vehicle were to be disabled, then you could actually take this out, put the tow strap into play, and then actually tow them out of the trail with this. Now, if you're also looking to eliminate some of that jarring factor, we do offer these now in a 10-foot kinetic bridle. So just like how I explained using the 8-foot tree saver in a bridle configuration, you could take the 10-foot version of this rope and attach it to 2 points, and that becomes the little damper in between both of the tow strap and extracting somebody off the trail. Now, something that's really good that's in both of these in these booklets here, I'll show you. So in the Basic Guide to Winching booklet, well, when you open this up, it'll cover all of these topics when it comes to the what your winch is made up of, all the terminology that's associated with your winch. We cover everything in here from hard shackles and soft shackles to different other rigging components. We talk about closed system winching. We even talk about the safety zone, which is some of the most important things, is the staying out of the danger zone during a recovery, not standing next to the winch line, not being near there, getting everybody a good distance away from that in case there were a failure. I mean, especially one of the most common things that we see is when people are trying to recover a vehicle on a sand hill or on an off-camber situation and people standing below the vehicles, which is something you don't want to do. You should be above that vehicle because gravity is going to bring that car down if ever there was a problem, right? You want to stay clear of any kind of situation that's in there. Now, the other thing as this gets into the back of this is that it also will go over best case uses of that gear. And so there's all kinds of different scenarios that are listed in the back of this book to go over how to use the winch, how to use pulleys, how to, understand kind of mechanical advantage. And then even in the back, one of the most valuable things is what we call the STOPA, or our Stuck Assessment Checklist. So STOPA stands for Stop, Think, Observe, Plan, and Act. So those of you that might be out there that are certified for scuba would know that there's, we kind of do things in scuba like in the rule of threes. I worked as a dive instructor for a long time before I ever got into off-road. And so it's amazing how some of those principles still apply to what we're doing. So you want to stop, you want to think about what's going to happen, you want to observe the situation, the terrain that you're in, plan that out, and then act. So as you get into this checklist, one of the biggest mistakes that we find, especially when people are using kinetic recovery or rushing through a scenario through that, is they don't even take the time to make sure to clear debris away from the tires. Is the vehicle four-wheel drive? Is it in four low? Did you air the tires down? Did you clear debris away from the tires? All these simple basics that people will just run to be like, oh, I got my rope and I'm going to do all these things. I'm just going to rush into doing this, which ultimately leads up to a failure. If you learn to go through the simple basic things, it'll become second nature, but it always is here for you to refer to it, right? And one of the big key things takes away in here is what we call the Meyer tire depth calculator. The Meyer tire depth calculator, especially in that compression terrain, will really give you a good insight to be like, okay, well, if your Jeep weighs 5,000 pounds and you are buried halfway up to the tire right through here, you're going to add an addition 100% of that gross vehicle weight at a minimum in order to extract that vehicle. So if your vehicle weighs 5,000 pounds and you are halfway up your tire or touching your frame, depending on the suspension system that you have, and you're that stuck, it's going to take a minimum of 10,000 pounds of force to start to extract that vehicle. So if you have only an 8,000 pound winch on the front of your rig, why are you even trying a straight line pull? You should instantly know that, oh, well, I'm that stuck. I should go out and I should already get my snatch block out because I'm already going to need to try to create mechanical advantage and save time when you go through the effort of putting through this. So this is a very vital tool to really starting to understand this. And especially as we do, we will be coming to some of the Jeep Jamborees this year to do also some live in-person training where you get hands-on on all this product and see this up close and personal. So just like that, along those lines with the kinetic energy manual, we also go through here and show you some of the basics of kinetic energy recovery, which on this first page here, we'll go over kind of the steps of the process of the driver meeting. Now, a lot of us that wheel and have off-road vehicles or have Jeeps, it's a lot more common for us. But man, when you come across a vehicle that like a Subaru Outback or a Nissan sedan or somebody that's stuck on the side of the road, even in a pickup truck, and you go to start to air their tires down, it's also being able to have that knowledge and conversation and be like, look, man, we got to let some air out. We got to widen the footprint. We got to give you a better traction so we can get you extracted in this situation. And then say like, look, I got an onboard compressor. I can fill your tires up as soon as we're done with this. Because, I remember when I first started wheeling, like I met a guy off the Jeep forum. I met him at a trailhead. We started airing the tires down. And I was like, how are we going to put air back in the tires? We're in the middle of nowhere. So I've been through every aspect that you can imagine of going through here, from the very basic things all the way up till now, right? So it's vital to think about those scenarios and prep those people as you're trying to help them through that. Like, hey man, let's just air your tires a little down. Maybe even especially if you're stuck on a rocky trail, maybe get the passengers out of the vehicle, right? If you can get weight out of the vehicle and even help yourself, I mean, especially if you've got mom and dad and the kids in the back and the dog, I mean, you could eliminate another 500 or 600 pounds by just offloading people out of the rig, right? So this booklet will kind of go over all those stuff for kinetic recovery. It'll talk about sizing the kinetic ropes per the vehicle that you have in there. And then even in the back end, do's and don'ts. So there's not many nevers, right, when it comes to vehicle recovery. We always like to say at the end of the day, what works is what counts. But some of the do's and don'ts of what to hook up and not hook up is also listed right here in this manual. And then even at the back end of this booklet, again, we'll also provide that same information. So the same stop a checklist and all that stuff is in the back of this booklet as well. So
Good
there's
stuff.
both vital information to carry in your car or in your vehicle to have available there as well.
Hey,
Yeah.
Justin, can you get that on Factor55.com's website? Is that where they can purchase it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's a whole
Okay.
section underneath there that the recovery manuals are listed on the page there.
Perfect. Okay.
Now,
Good,
all of these tools and best uses. Number one, the very first thing is also to not only have a good conversation, good drivers meetings before you start this, but the number one recovery tool, as far as we are concerned, right here, like your head, is always a good one that people say, but is wearing gloves. I don't care even if you have synthetic rope versus steel cable, you should always have gloves on and protect your hands. You're dealing with hot exhaust, you're dealing with rocks and brush and terrain. And the one thing when it comes to like this synthetic fiber, right, is that it has a hollow core. That hollow core, when it presses together, which exposes the hollow core on the inside of this rope, will pick up sharp rocks, especially in the Southwest, could pick up cactus needles and things like this. So even, you see a lot of these things like, oh, I got synthetic rope, I don't need to wear gloves. Dude, it's not worth the risk. Because if that slides through your hand or you slip on the trail or you do something else, and it cuts your hand or, lacerates your finger, now you've got a compounded, even larger problem. So, we always start with having, a good pair of gloves to have on there. And we will have, in fact, with Factor 55, a little secret here is we will have a USA made leather glove available soon on our website. So look forward to some brand new products that'll be coming out here as well. But protecting your hands is vital in any of that situation, especially if you're going underneath of a vehicle and trying to attach to an unconventional recovery point. You always want to keep your digits and keep your fingers safe, right? So now kind of getting in, kind of going over this. Well, Mike, how are we doing on time?
We're definitely extended on time right now, but I think, if you could transition after this to just more proper use of the recovery gear,
Sure.
proper. And but this is the great part. This is your magic show. This is
So I like to show everybody right here where when we're talking about the use of our fast fit, right? synthetic fiber is really vital in a lot of ways because of how effective this can be used. So for those of you who haven't seen this, there are a lot of videos of us doing this online, especially on our YouTube channels. So this tool is called our Fast Fit. It's a wire basket fit. It threads together. It's a billet shaft that's thread together here with what this wire basket is on the back end, which is like a Kellum grip. So what this does is this opens up the back end of the wire basket. And if you ever have a winch line failure, this grabs onto the end of the wire basket and then expands over top of there, so it grabs onto that tail. Once you know the diameter of rope that you have and the bury length that you want this tail to go, you simply grab this down here. You can push this rope together, which exposes the hollow core. You can take the fid needle and it goes right through the center section of the rope and then instantly starts making a loop at the end of the winch line. Once you make that loop, you can come back through here and push this together one more time and even help to create kind of a lock stitch and have that come back through here to where you now have the eye at the end of your line. And then just as we use the hollow core to pass the needle through, now we expand this open to where now the fid needle starts to find its way going down the middle section of the rope. Now, as it's burying down through the center, now we just need to cheat this thing down here in order to get the tail to bury deep down inside of this line. Now, for the diameter of rope that you're using, 3/8 is common for us Jeepers, but this tool can be used for multiple sizes of rope, and that's all laser engraved onto this needle body, so that way you know that it has a measuring tool and will tell you the diameter of the rope and the bury length that you should do that. So that information is right here. But once that passes through the tail, you can pull the tail all the way through. You can remove the needle from there. You grab the end of this eyelet, and then you literally just milk it down into itself, and you put the winch line right back together. It's that easy to repair and splice your synthetic winch line. So if you go into a process, start tying knots, the one thing that this wants a continuous load path. So as you start to tie knots in this rope, if it breaks, what happens is you create a bite in that line, and where that bite is at, that's where the rope is going to fail. So in order to get back into the proper minimum breaking strength is to re-splice your line, and it's literally this fast to be able to do this. So with this tool, you can even make your own winch line extensions, and if you so want, you could even make your own soft shackles. All of our rigging components, right? Every single one of these is spliced and put together by hand. So that's why we have really highly trained cordage experts to put these things together, so that way they're the safest products that you can get available out on the marketplace. So one of the things of best case use when it comes to using even a soft shackle, there's a lot of things that are out there on the internet that will talk about knot placement of the soft shackle and where this goes. So this goes into the, like, are you going to lock the knot, right? Which means that the knot is up against the load or the rigging. Now, with certain types of soft shackles, depending on how they're spliced, that is absolutely imperative, because what happens is some soft shackles only have a single loop and are buried straight back into itself, where it's like a single hole, just like what Kia is showing, where it comes right back and goes into the body. Now, with those types of shackles, what can happen is if you do not cheat that back up around the body, that noose could stay loose, which could potentially allow the knot to fall through there. So that is not a secure way that you want to rig this. But with high quality USA made shackles, what happens is you can see this figure 8 configuration here. So what that does is that when you open up that noose and take the knot and go through here, that it self tightens under load. So no matter where you put this in the rigging, we have an entire test video that we put out on our YouTube channel about this, whether you have it up against the rigging, whether you have it up against the pull force of the load, or whether you have the knot in the middle, it does not matter. As long as that noose is over the knot in the correct way, this is going to provide at least the minimum breaking strength of whatever these soft shackles are rated to. My favorite configuration is having the knot in the middle. The reason being is because of under heavy load, what tends to happen is this knot starts to roll up and starts to get flat because of how tight it gets. Now, what happens is as soon as the recovery is over and this starts to drop, it's that much easier for me to go straight to the middle, to not even have to readjust, to push this thing away from me, to open that up in order to get the ball to come out. Sweet. So it's also an easier way to retrieve my gear and get it back into my kit when I'm done with the recovery. Same kind of thing when it comes to any of our other rigging straps, right? A strap can be used in 3 configurations. It can be done in a straight pull. It can be done in a basket when you're grabbing both ends of the eyelets, or it can be done in a choke where you're going to run one eyelet through the other and choke this down around a roll cage or a frame or wherever, especially when it comes to like buggies or big time rock crawlers. So the choke is the weakest point that it does because it's actually making a bite and not making the load path choke down onto itself. So, but it can be very effective, especially if you're trying to deal with the tie rod or some other type of component that you want to keep the strap from rolling down a tube. Because that's the one thing when you start to use soft shackles, especially on a rounded surface, they can shift and slide down things. And if you want to stay dedicated to a point, especially when you're trying to grab onto a roll cage or something like that, that's when choking a short anchor strap around there will actually bite down and hold and will make it easier so it doesn't roll around or down the tubes.
Hey, Justin, real quick, I know it's going to come up again. I'm going to ask the question. So back to the soft shackle, not orientation. Really, the key is a quality soft shackle, and then the orientation doesn't matter. So I just want to reiterate that. I know you've told me that a bunch of times, but it all boils down to that, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot of argument between best practice or the strongest method of how it's used. But the reality is like, the loads that we're putting on this equipment and those max loads that we're going to be able to produce with our heavy vehicles, especially when you're talking about our gross vehicle weight being north of 6,000 pounds, especially with some of the Gladiators. And then you're dealing with, bumpers, wheels and tires, even upgraded axles, roof racks, rooftop tents, all kinds of extra things. Right. But even at that point, these things are still sized so strong that usually whatever is connecting the two pieces is going to be the fuse where it's going to fail. Like a lot of people will also talk about the fact to be like, well, I don't want a projectile or a piece of metal flying back at me. Well, this on the Ultra Hook, for instance, the hook opening breaks at 32,000 pounds. The shackle tap breaks at 48,000 pounds. This soft shackle breaks at 39,000 pounds. The tree saver in a basket configuration around a tree breaks at 90,000 pounds. And your winch line that all of that is attached to breaks between 15 and 17. Oh. So if anything is going to let go in your rigging, it's going to be the winch rope.
Sure.
So none of this is going to come flying back at you unless it's on something that potentially could slip off or unless you didn't set the rigging up properly. So more than anything, it's more of a value to learn how to safely rig those components.
Sure.
And getting out and practicing with all these individual pieces of gear with people from your local Jeep club, or looking up for a local recovery trainer, or looking at some of the training videos and some of the education offerings that we have online, looking through these manuals and learning how to set this stuff up properly.
Next question I have, and I know it's going to come up too, especially we know we have some new Jeepers on here that are wanting to buy a winch for their Jeep Jamboree season, the off-road season. What do you recommend for sizing for winches based on, Gladiator, 4-door, JL, JK?
Yeah, so we have a rule of thumb. Or Eric, do you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying, let me add to that. I was on mute. Related part when you answer this, Kia, is guests said they have a 2019 Rubicon with an OEM Mopar metal bumper that will accommodate the Jeep model of the Warren winch through the bumper. Is it better to get the Warren winch especially for the Jeep or any Warren winch? And do you need to make suspension changes?
Yeah, so that's a great question. For the 2019 model year, with the Rubicon bumper or the Mopar bumper, so we're online installs. We have relationships with the OEMs when it comes to both Ford and Stellantis. And so if you choose the checkbox and customize your vehicle build with the winch, you will get the OE specific winch. But if you just get the Mopar bumper or the Rubicon bumper, it's up to you and your choice. You can, for the 2019 model year, you can just get the OE carrier plate that we actually sell. You can't mount the winch without the carrier plate. Pop that in there and pop any of our winches that I can go through in the selection criteria. If you want to go through Mopar, you're more than welcome to go through Mopar as well. On the newer model years, we made some specific, unique tweaks and changes to the specific winches based on the needs of the OEM. So that's a little more, I would say, niche and catered towards that model year. So if you're going to get it, you might as well click the box on your build and get it from the factory.
So customer wants to go to Summit Racing and order a winch, or go to factor55.com and order a winch, what size would they order for that 4-door JK from you
Yeah.
guys?
Yep. So our rule of thumb, really, when it comes to winch selection, is we always go off the our rule of thumb is 1.5 times the gross vehicle weight of your vehicle.
Okay.
That's a safe bet. However, what we like to do is if you have a 2-door Jeep, older, newer, we usually go with an 8K model, really more than enough for what you got. If you got a
8,000.
4-door Jeep, yep, at 8,000 pound. If you have a 4-door Jeep, we recommend a 10,000 pound winch.
Okay.
And if you got the Gladiator, we size them up to the 12,000 pound, just because we know they're going to put bigger tires on it, bigger wheels on it, and go out and have fun. So really, it's the 8, 10, and 12 that we usually recommend. We recently moved away from the 8 with our newest winch launches with the XD and the XP. So we only have it in 8, 10, 12, and 14,000 pound capacities now. So we've upgraded a little. But at the end of the day, I think it's what's important to take away from here is assessing the situation when you get out, right? Most of the time, you don't need the 8,000 pounds. You don't need the 10,000 pounds. You just need a little bit of rolling, a little bit of traction, a little bit of momentum to get them unstuck and move forward. Most of the time, you're putting on anywhere between 2,000 to 4,000 pounds on that winch anyways. But in the moments that you do need it and you're completely mired, you're up to the frame or you're halfway through the wheel, if you know that going in, you can get out a snatch block. And even if you have that 10,000 pound winch, you can use mechanical advantage and double your pulling capacity to get to 20,000 pounds. And there's ways that we can show that's in the manual. You can double your pulling capacity through mechanical advantage, but you do have your speeds. But I don't mind spending another 10 minutes waiting for the vehicle to come unstuck if it means I can get home faster at the end of the day. So really the rule of thumb is 8 for a 2-door, 10 for a 4-door, 12 for the Gladiator. If you want to upgrade, 10, 12, 14.
All right, perfect.
And then with the suspension question, if somebody hangs the winch off the front, do they need to change your suspension?
Absolutely, depending on what else you're putting on the front. So we have stubby bumpers, which don't add a lot of weight. They can be between 60 to 80 pounds. The winch itself is another 80 to 100 pounds, depending on which variant of it purchased. So there's around 160 to 200 pounds there. Some people want the full width bumpers. Some people want the full width with a bull bar. So it really depends on how much loading you want to put on the front of the vehicle, and then rate your springs to essentially accommodate that loading. So if I have a vehicle that I know I'm going to put an ARB bull bar on, for example, or a Fab Fours with the full grill guard, in a winch, I want a medium duty to heavier duty spring rather than a light duty spring, so I don't get that droop in the front.
Yeah, great questions.
Yeah.
All right, Justin, we interrupted you on proper use of recovery gear. I know there's some more things you want to cover.
Yeah, so, well, and along those lines too, really the thing that we want to do is we want to pull all the fenders off and just fling mud everywhere. That's what we want to do. So what's really interesting too about the Xeon XD and also the newly launched Xeon XP model, the Xeon XD, we actually just won Best New Product in Off-Road at the last year's SEMA show. So it was a really big win for us introducing that product line to the market. And one of the things that we always even say, the one thing about the 8,000 pound winches, if you're going to go even in that low capacity, is the line speed is actually considerably faster. So just because of the gear ratio that's built into the planetary there. So there's a lot of value that goes into that, especially if you're only going to be using it on lighter weight vehicles or doing this. But if you have the other rigging tools, you can set that up to do that. So along those lines of safe rigging, when it comes to pulley blocks or winch rings like this, is that you always want to think about a pulley being used as a fixed block or a rolling block. And as a fixed block, it would be if I'm going to set the pulley up to a tree and attach to that and back to my vehicle, and it's a fixed anchor and I'm winching myself out or to it. And a rolling block would be as if I was attached to something else and maybe moving this line off to the side and splitting that load and having that thing be rolling towards me. So pulleys can be used for winch line redirection, because the one thing that you want to avoid doing, especially with the winches, is that with the Xeon line, you don't have this problem because the Xeon line actually has the rope and actually goes through the center point of the drum and actually has a patented puck that holds the line onto the drum. Traditional or older style winches or even cheaper winches that you'll find will have kind of the the bolt style on the side of the drum. And what can happen is if you are starting to like really have a high angle of pull, it can load the winch line on one side of the drum. And if that starts to load on that side of the drum, that load path, from depending on how stuck you are, how much force is being applied to the winch, it's going to run that force all the way around that line and to that little bolt and shear it off the side. That's why we always say to leave at least one full layer of wrap on the drum. So that way, you know that you're trying to avoid that from happening. Or if you really have a high angle of pull, that's when you can pull out and set up your pulley blocks in order to redirect that winch line, so it's keeping the winch line to start spooling up more evenly on the drum. So it's not just even about gaining mechanical advantage, it's also about solving the future problems that that you haven't even gotten into yet, right? That's one of the other big key features they can use with a snatch block or a synthetic winch ring.
I've got a question for you. So you had brought this up yesterday. I think it's very important for this audience to hear. And you touched on it just a little bit, but hey, is it all right to run that soft shackle through the eyelet of an aftermarket bumper?
Oh, exactly. So that's a big one that we're going to talk about. So years ago, we actually used to sell the Gator Jaw soft shackle, which was made by Bubba Rope. So we actually introduced soft shackles out at King of the Hammers going on now like 12 years ago. And we actually had a working relationship with Bubba Rope for years, and they make great high quality USA made products. They're a really great company. But one of their taglines that they did is that they said when they released the Gator Jaw was they were saying, well, it's stronger than steel. Well, that's to a point, to a minimum breaking strength per the fiber diameter, right, of whatever the shackle is. So instantly what people started to do is take these soft shackles and stick them through the D-ring holes on their front bumper. Well, those D-ring mounts are laser cut steel with like 1-inch hole openings that are on the end there. And again, just like everything that we've reiterated, talked about, you're dealing with tension and slack and tension and slack. And so now you have this rope going through a laser cut steel hole. And what that is doing is under heavy load, you have these sharp edges that are digging into these fibers and then also dealing with a sawing motion, which could then inevitably allow the shackle to fail. So that's exactly why our recovery kits come with hard shackles to put into place, because once these things are living on the front bumper, then you have a good radius to actually attach other different rigging components to, whether it's a hook, whether it's a soft shackle, whether it's any other kind of component to go through there. So you do not want to put soft shackles through the shackle tabs on steel bumpers. Do not do that.
And awesome. Speaking of steel bumpers, just a quick little tidbit. So I saw a question pop up with respect to mounting and different options for winches. I would say one thing that differentiates both Warn and Fab 4s are steel fabricated bumpers. We actually pull test every single bumper that we have here in our facility in Oregon at Warn and our facility in South Carolina for Fab 4s. So we ensure that the winch fits in the tray of the bumper as it's supposed to, with no spacers or risers to essentially snug it in there. The 4 bolts, you mount it up, and all the bumpers that we sell have been pull tested to actually pull the 10,000, 12,000, or even 16.5 thousand pound winch that we have on the heavyweight. So when you get a bumper manufactured and fabricated by us, you could be assured that it's been pull tested to the capacity of the winch, whereas other manufacturers in the industry do not pull test their bumpers, and that's why they also have a lot of fitment issues as well.
Great point. And could you comment on the follow-up question that was, when using a riser, I think there's some physics concerns of actually raising that winch up on a riser or elevated bolts and then the pull angle and whatnot.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of concerns there, depending on how much space you're given between the mounting feet and where it needs to be. One, you need to get longer bolts. So there's that part. And the moment you get longer bolts, because the winch is now sitting higher than it needs to be from the base of that plate, as you're pulling a straight line pull at an angle, whether it's up or down, you're creating almost a lever off of those bolts, right? Because now they are longer. And so that lever and that moment force is creating higher shear forces, which can potentially allow your drum supports to start failing, depending on the angle and the loads that you put on there. So ideally, you would always want to be as flat as possible, and you always want to pull from the bottom of the drum as much as possible to reduce those forces that are coming in.
All right. Well, we're getting a little long on time here. So I think we should just kind of pretty sure we've wrapped up most of the using of recovery gear. And before we get into Q&A, Justin, you and I talked before we kicked off this meeting when we were in the green room. You want to share something special with the crew that's on here today. So why don't you go ahead and let them know.
Yeah, so for everybody that joined us today, and like, look, man, I have a 2-door JK. It's stretched on 40s and the whole thing, and like, I'm a diehard Jeeper, man. We're all in off-road, and we care about you guys as much as we care about like the precision, everything that we take, and the time that we take in designing all of our products. We spend our life in the dirt, and when it comes to the weekend, I'm not going golfing, man. I'm going wheeling. You know what I mean? And that's the only thing I live and breathe and can think about. So what we want to offer all of you who have tuned in, and for you people that have signed up to come to Jeep Jamboree USA and to spend time with these trail guys and these wonderful people in this organization and supporting the Jeep brand, we are going to offer an exclusive 20% off discount code of factor55.com for all of you that have tuned in tonight to use. Mike will follow up and send this code out to you guys. It'll start first thing tomorrow, and it will run for 72 hours. So you'll have that for the next like 3 days to be available to get 20% off factor55.com with the discount code that we'll supply to you guys. So make sure you've put your email addresses in and done these things so that way you get that code sent out from Jeep Jamboree Direct. And then you can hit us up if you have any direct questions on Instagram, on Facebook, YouTube, wherever. You can find all those things. I run all the social media for both of the brands, so I'm the one that's answering all the questions. Or if you see me posting in the middle of the night, it's because my wife and daughter are asleep and I'm not getting yelled at for playing on my phone. So just so you know, that's where it's happening from. So, but if you have any questions for that, again, we just want to offer this exclusive 20% off discount for you guys to get geared up for your next Jamboree. And then we are so excited to be out there, and we're going to get a list out with the Jamboree staff here to also let you know the Jamborees that we can attend and actually do some of this live in-person training and do an entire, hands-on demonstration of all this equipment so you can really see the real-world application of how this is used. Safety is of the utmost importance, right? We all want to go home at the end of the day and not be stuck, especially out in the backcountry, or we've got these vehicles and they're very capable, but the point to where that they're not, man, this is the thing that can get you to go a little bit further.
All right. I think what we'll probably do, and we'll discuss it, but more than likely we'll probably send it out via email to everybody. So don't worry about it if you didn't get your email address, and we'll share that with all of you. And those of you that didn't watch, you're probably watching it now as we recorded this as well. So, all right. Well, that kind of wraps up the formal section of this, but I want to make sure we cover some questions and answers, some questions here. So Eric, I'm sure you have a laundry list of questions. Is there a few that you can throw out there that seem to be the like you've seen this asked 10 times, we should probably address it?
Yeah, we've got a handful of questions here that have come up. It's actually about 8 or 9 total ones here that we put together and conglomerated down. First one is, are the rubber pads that are on the links, are they as protective on roller fair leads?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they can be. So, guys, for those of you who still want to use a roller fair lead with synthetic rope, that's totally okay. The only thing you have to be mindful of is that synthetic rope will act like water and will dive, just between the fibers, like on the drum, and will also, especially on those high angle pulls, could get caught in the corners of those rollers. But if you are using a roller fair lead, even with synthetic rope for that matter, I always like to say this, you want to make sure that that roller has only ever been used with synthetic rope. You don't want to take the roller you had with your steel cable and use it for synthetic rope, because there could be Mars and burrs and stuff that are in there that could damage the synthetic rope. But yes, even if you're still using steel cable, which we have a lot of industrial customers that still use steel cable, fire departments, a lot of search and rescue will do that, especially brush trucks. When you're dealing with heat and live fire in the backcountry. But yes, those parts will actually integrate, and those rubber pads will protect the roller fair lead surface as well.
Great, thank you. How often do you recommend replacing a synthetic winch line that does not see more than 5 or 6 easy pulls a year?
Yeah. So usually when it comes to a synthetic line, we have a procedure of always checking it before you go out on the ride. Whether it's the night before, just take out the rope in your garage, see what the condition it's in. Always check it after the trail ride. and then I would check it every 90 to 120 days. And what you're essentially looking for is synthetic rope. At the end of the day, I like to call it, is just fancy plastic, right? The number one killer is being glided along an abrasive edge. And so when you start looking at synthetic rope, you will start to notice that it starts to fray, or the strands are coming on loose, or just like there's been a little bit of a fight going on between the fibers. And so when you start seeing that, those little fibers are reducing, will reduce the breaking strength of the product. There
I'll
you
get
go.
close up here, because when you pull this apart, you can see